Now, Tuesday, the 3rd of December, was the first day of the new e-toll system in South Africa. Started with many motorists there looking for back roads to get to work or wherever it is they're going, instead of buying e-tags or using toll roads and getting fined for using them illegally. Now, there were some small queues at customer service centres on Monday, but it appears that many motorists are playing a wait-and-see game, as CCTV's Angelo Coppola now reports.
SANRAL, the roads agency responsible for the e-toll system, said earlier that close to 800,000 vehicles had been registered. On the legal front yesterday, the Freedom Front Plus lost its court bid to have its application declared urgent in an attempt to stop e-tolls from being implemented. But that hasn't deterred the Democratic Alliance, another political party, from continuing its fight.
The nature of the court case is quite significant enough that many new players have come on board, and I think the question is quite a serious one as to how did you tag this bill, because clearly it is having significant implications for and material implications for Gauteng, for the city of Johannesburg, as you correctly point out, that the alternative routes are going to be clogged up. So people must decide that when there's such a material issue, why the legislature of Gauteng never voted on the issue is a question. And the law gives SANRAL the right to toll wherever else they like.
The groundswell of resistance appears to be consistent. Road users are adamant that they won't be buying those electronic tags that make a beeping sound every time a car goes under a highway gantry on Gauteng's tolled roads.
The issue of tolling is going to be one that the battle is going to continue for a long time.
I'm not going to buy e-toll because I think it's actually a waste of money, and we haven't got money to waste.
It's not a system that I particularly agree with, in that we've paid for these roads before through the fuel levy and other taxes, and now this is a double taxation. And I don't plan on buying an e-tag anytime soon, especially since the law doesn't force me to actually buy an e-tag. So I'm going to stay put until they come and collect me.
Nobody yet knows whether or not the e-toll system will be successful or not. What we do know is that the roads around Johannesburg that aren't highways are heavily congested this morning, day one of that new e-toll system. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in Johannesburg.
Over in East Africa, Kenya has formally started construction of a new $650 million terminal at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in its capital, Nairobi. The project was kick-started by the country's president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, on Tuesday. And if all does go according to plan, the terminal should be ready for use by the year 2017. The new terminal will nearly double JKIA's annual passenger capacity to about 20 million passengers once it's complete. Two Chinese companies, the China Aerotechnology International Engineering Corporation and Anhui Construction Engineering Group, are handling that terminal's construction. China, of course, does continue to play a key role in infrastructure development in Ethiopia as well. The landlocked state is speeding up the construction of its first national rail network under a vendor financing agreement. Now, that's seen as Chinese companies often win many contracts there. The National Railway Project is funded by the Exim Bank of China. CCTV's Peter Akaba has been looking at the fine print of the project in a bit more detail.
Launched in February of the year 2012, construction of Ethiopia's first national railway network continues. The China Railway Engineering Corporation (CREC) won the project with a contract price of some $1.8 billion. The government of Ethiopia is looking forward to seeing timely completion of the railway project that connects the country's capital to the Djibouti port, which is crucial for Ethiopia's imports and exports. Ethiopia's newly elected president, Dr. Mulatu Teshome, recently visited the project's slipper and beam precasting factory.
I'm satisfied with the progress so far, but it is just the beginning. We want to see the progress of the project in a way that it will be absolutely completed by the contract time, which is 2015. And from what we see as of today, there is hopes that the CREC is capable of completing the project in time.
The backbone and main artery of the line is located in Ethiopia's central plateau, the Sebeta Adama Meso line, which runs for some 328 kilometers. 114 kilometers of the railway is double track and is designed to cross major investment zones and more than 20 towns right across the country. More than 25% of the project is now complete.
Progress is very well as per the contract schedule. we are 100% in time.
It is estimated that the corporation's slipper and beam precasting factory has created jobs for up to 3,500 Ethiopians and some 200 Chinese nationals. Peter Wakaba, CCTV.
Just before we take our break, let's take you over to Nigeria. A massive oil spill near the Brass Export Oil Terminal has spread right into the Atlantic and the swamps of the Niger Delta. That spill has now forced hundreds of local fishermen to suspend their work. They say the crude oil spilled not only destroyed critical marine life, but has also decimated their livelihoods in the process. With the rising frequency of oil spills in Africa's top crude producer, over 10,000 fishermen have been rendered jobless since the start of 2013. And that in turn has caused quite a bit of concern about just how effective the regulation of Nigeria's oil industry really is. Nigerian legislators are now working on a law to impose stiffer penalties on oil firms responsible for spills in a move that could see major foreign oil companies heavily fined.
It's true that the spill is from Algiers facility, from their terminal, and that it was as a result of a loading error, which has been confirmed. And I saw crude oil just at the coast of Odioma. So it is confirmed there is a serious, massive spill that has even gone into the ground. A lot of, I even saw dead fish. The vegetations were all oily. So it's confirmed. What you see in my hand now is a sample that one of the fisher folks got for me, and this is the black gold from Algiers facility.
Time for a short break, but there's plenty more content coming up, including we'll be talking about making Africa food security come back, looking at steps to salvage neglected traditional African food crops.
BizAsia. Asia means business.
Welcome back. Now, in Ghana's capital, the second edition of the Farmers Market has just been concluded with plenty of locally grown organic produce on display. The event organizers hope to nudge Ghana's farmers to produce more sustainable, organic and local food to go hand in hand with the growth of Ghana's middle class. The Accra Green Market was formed to improve food security for local residents by making it cheaper and physically easier for them to get healthy food.
We want people to eat healthy because we think that there's a lot of chemicals in the products that we eat, but we know that it's better when you eat organic and bring green products. So giving consumers and people that opportunity to access organic products that they can buy for cheap, and also giving farmers markets where they can sell their products, because one of the things that people complain about is access to markets for farmers.
The Green Market is a perfect place for us to launch Fresh to You, because people who come here, they want fresh fruit and vegetables, they want organic, they want biological produce.
Food stability is the key thing. So when you talk about organizing an event that is centered around the hygienic presentation of food to a population, it's one key ingredient in a nation's development.
Let's talk about the African Orphan Crops Consortium. It has opened the African Plant Breeding Academy in the Kenyan capital today, and that organization will focus its research specifically on neglected African food crops. Now, the academy aims to improve the livelihoods of Africa's smallholder farmers, cut hunger and boost Africa's food supply at the same time, mainly by studying and genetically manipulating the genes of about 100 traditional African food crops to create more robust produce with much higher nutritional contents. Now, orphan crops, the term that we're using here, essentially African food crops that have been neglected by the food industry as a whole simply because they are not economically viable. Let's get some perspectives on this matter now. Dr. Howard Iana Shapiro is the Chief Agricultural Officer at the global food giant Mars and is live in studio with us tonight. Thank you so much for your time this evening, Dr. Shapiro. Tell us, for the benefits of those of us who are not familiar with what gene sequencing really is all about, what is it and why is it relevant at this point in time?
If one can understand that when we look at plant science and it's 10,000 years old of making selections from the field, the ability to speed the process up and understand the mechanism of the plant are very essential for the future of the planet. With a genetic map, we are able to choose the treasures in that information, whether it's drought tolerance, climate adaptability, or nutritional value. This map will allow us to make those decisions in a much faster manner and bring to the farmer and then to the rural consumers of this project a more nutritious set of plants that will help to end the plague of stunting in children.
Indeed, so we're turbocharging Mother Nature, as it were, but I also understand that the findings from these studies will be made publicly available. Why is that?
Well, there's no reason to hold this information and capture it for one group only. If we make it public, people will have access to this information, and the ability to speed forward with more nutritious plants will happen much quicker. As an open source data, people from around the world will be able to input information to help and speed this forward so that we really can bring as fast as possible a nutritional security to the rural sector, which has been lacking at this point.
Indeed. I understand that genetic sequencing programs of this sort do require enormous amounts of computational power. Are there any plans to outsource parts of the number crunching, say, in a similar manner to Stanford's Folding at Home project?
Well, what is happening on a very fast basis is the nature of high-speed data computing, and the sequencers themselves are changing rapidly. The local sequencers will have the ion protons based at the World Agroforestry Center are essentially a solid-state chip. So the amount of computing power that is needed to analyze that information is falling rapidly by the accuracy of the information that these chips are be able to deliver.
Indeed. Let's look at this over the last couple of decades. There's been, at best, a relatively limited market for orphaned crops across Africa. So walk us through how this program will then translate to realizing those gains that we spoke about earlier, cutting malnutrition, making sure that we have better quality, more nutritional produce on tables across Africa.
Well, when one says that there is not a market, I think it's a misnomer. There's a gigantic market because these are the food crops that are eaten in the rural sector every day of the week. These are the crops that women are eating during pregnancy. These are the crops that they feed their newly born children and sustain them. If we can increase the nutritive value, if we can increase the folate content or the zinc content or the vitamin A content, many of the diseases that are the outcome of malnutrition and chronic hunger can help be eliminated.
Indeed. Walk us through this as well. As a food company, a global food giant, what exactly is in it for Mars from this project, given the fact that a lot of the information will be made publicly available anyway?
Well, as a privately held, family-owned company, what is unique is that we have the ability to make decisions differently than a publicly held company. So when I approached the business to take this project on and help lead it and organize it into the African Orphan Crops Consortium, this unusual collaboration, they were enthusiastic. The use of some of our profits refers to freedom and the ability to make decisions in the rural sector that will influence the next generations of farmers and their consumers is something we feel we have a responsibility to help solve the problem.
As I see it, finally, Dr. Shapiro, you have a fairly interesting mix of backers in this project, the United States, China, NEPAD. It's an enormous public-private partnership. How did this entire group of diverse individuals and personalities really come together?
It's very simple. The idea of stunting not being solved in the rural sector, the idea of having generations of children who do not reach their neurological, their physical, or their economic potential is unacceptable. So when talking about China, BGI, the world's most important sequencing center, Life Technology with the equipment here, the other people, iPlant, which will hold the data and help us process it, University of California, Davis, which will teach the Academy, the World Agroforestry Center here in Nairobi, which will host it. We're all in it together as uncommon collaborators. We're not competitors. In fact, we complement each other, and this allows this project to have a reality that started from a commitment of the Clinton Global Initiative 2 years ago to mobilization and to an opening of the Academy today at the World Agroforestry Center. It's quite unusual, but this is the future of uncommon collaboration.
Indeed. Thank you very much for your time this evening, Dr. Shapiro. It's been an absolute
sir.
pleasure having you here on BizAfrica tonight. Now let's move on to Egypt. Its southern Sinai region is one of the main tourist destinations in that North African state. In 2011, at least up to 2011, the 50,000 or so hotel rooms in that region had an average occupancy rate of 90%, which is relatively high. As Egypt's political and economic crisis has rolled on, however, occupancy rates have collapsed as tourists virtually disappear, and that in turn has dragged the region's economy down. If it is to recover then, Southern Sinai must diversify beyond tourism. To find out how it plans to do that, CCTV's Yasser Hakim spoke to the governor of Southern Sinai, Khaled Fouad.
Your Excellency, what is new concerning the embargo that has been lifted on tourists coming to Egypt from several countries?
Most of the countries, around 15, lifted their warnings on visiting Egypt. Germany was the first, followed by Italy, Spain, and lately Russia. Those in particular send the most tourists. We used to have occupancy of only 30% since July. Now it has reached 51%, and we expect more after the embargo was lifted.
How are you preparing to receive the tourists who are planning to come to Egypt in the next few months?
We concentrated on security and ensuring that Southern Sinai remains stable and safe. We host several events to prove it. There was a Russian concert which attracted 5,000 Russian tourists to the mountain, all the way from 150 hotels. This month, we had the art show for 50 Italian artists, the Euromed conference for youth, and we are planning in Christmas to have a British pop star to perform a concert in Sharm el-Sheikh. We are trying to send a message to the world that Egypt is safe.
Sinai has a lot of potential in different types of tourism. Can you give us an idea about the different type of tourism throughout the whole of Sinai, not just Sharm el-Sheikh?
The vast and beautiful beaches of Sham and Hurghada, they are the renowned diving spots. Then you have the religious tourism like the St. Catherine Monastery. There is the medical tourism with the Musa and Pharaoh's fountains that cure many diseases and ailments. We have the largest conference center in the Middle East. It hosted the Arab Summit, the Palestinian-American-Israeli Peace Agreement, and the Non-Allied Movement Summit. We also have 5 natural protectorates.
What are the investment plans in these cities, in the area of Sinai, in the next few months and years? And what do you expect out of the foreign businessmen, especially in China, if they come to invest here in Egypt?
76% of the governorate is still untapped and ready for investments. We prepared feasibility studies for potential investors. We have Emirati and Saudi investors constructing new hotels. There is an Italian businessman who is building an Olympic sports complex to be a training camp for foreign teams and host sports championships. The 15 rare minerals in the desert here will require factories and pharmaceutical plants. We have 5 ports and 5 airports to serve the industrial, commercial and touristic services. We will provide all the facilities possible to any businessman willing to invest here. We are in talks with potential Chinese investors as well for several projects in the industrial sector, but we hope we can attract Chinese tourists as well as investors.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining us on CCTV.
The governor there of the Southern Sinai region, Khaled Fouad. Right, let's move on to South Africa. Wildlife, of course, is one of the country's main tourist attractions. Increasingly, though, concerns are being raised about the impact poaching is having on the industry as a whole. So far, almost 900 rhinos have been killed this year alone, most of them shot dead in the Kruger National Park, which borders Mozambique. CCTV's Angela Coppola was there.
The park sees 1.4 million tourists pass through its gates annually, and the data shows that that number has increased marginally this year. The park covers some 20,000 square kilometers, 360 of which are on an international border with Mozambique. At the moment, the increase in military and security presence in the park is not a concern for tourists, but that could change in an instant.
When you talk to tourists, there is concern. In terms of visible law enforcement, we find that they welcome it. Mostly they welcome even vehicle control points. There is, however, no denying that this is a risk. We don't regard it as a high risk, but it is a risk to the 1.5 million people coming here. One wouldn't like an incident that could really harm that, because numbers are steadily growing. This is a unique piece of the planet. We must manage that risk very well, and we have contingency plans in place to make sure that we keep poachers away from tourists.
The tourist statistics for the national park seem to have held up rather well, despite the tail end of the global financial crisis. This is mostly due to the South African currency weakness in the recent past. It's meant that long-haul tourists still have an appetite to visit the country, bringing in foreign currency. It's a delicate balance in the Kruger, but one that has been maintained.
I think, in fact, the media should bring the word out more firm that they are informed as to what the activities are and what the threats are, and inform tourists as happy tourists, rather than try and hide it and not tell them about it.
One of the reasons tourists visit the Kruger is to see one of the 5,000 black rhino and 20,000 white rhino that are still in the park. It's definitely one of the star attractions of the Big Five, and a sighting is rare. Wildlife tourism is a huge generator of employment here in the Kruger National Park and nationally in South Africa. This is set to be threatened, though, as the fight to save those rhinos starts in earnest. The issue really is the fact that tourists aren't impacted at the moment. This may all change once and if a tourist and a poacher meet. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in the Kruger National Park.
Speaking of losses, however, that essentially is a theme really as far as equities are concerned, at least the ones that we track here for you on BizAfrica. The all-share index in Nigeria in the red by well over 2/10. Pretty much the same story in South Africa. The all-share index down by 1.62%. Interesting developments, however, in the 20-share index on the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Rev Pingo, as you might recall, in November actually indicated that it would be going private and delisting. There was a counter offer from Centum, one of the more successful private equity firms around the country. Interesting comparisons being made about Barbarians at the gate in this particular point. The market closed a little higher off the back of that news, and the Egyptian market also in the red, down 0.07 percentage points. We'll have more business for you at 10:00 GMT tomorrow.